Ramon lived with his wife Mira and their 10-year-old son Rayu in a small rented house at the edge of a crowded town. Their home had 2 tiny rooms and a kitchen that always smelled of damp smoke because the chimney never worked properly. Ramon spent most of his days at a repair shop where he fixed broken fans, radios, and small machines. He earned enough to feed his family, but not enough to dream big. Mira stitched clothes for neighbors and earned a little money to support the household. Life was a long chain of simple struggles. Even small things felt like a luxury. They had always wished for a better future, but hope came slowly for a family like theirs. Every evening, Ramon returned home tired but smiling. He did not want his family to worry about his long hours or the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Mira cooked simple meals and told him about her day. Raju talked non-stop about school, friends, or something he had seen on the street. Their life was not full of comfort. It was full of love. One morning, everything changed when Ramon saw a small advertisement in an old newspaper at the repair shop. The paper was lying on a dusty table. Someone had left it there days ago. Ramon picked it up and scanned through the posts without much interest. But then one headline caught his eye. It said that an old mansion called the Jefferson Mansion was being sold at an extremely low price. The place was located on the edge of a quiet countryside area. According to the advertisement, the mansion had been empty for many years and needed major repairs. Because of this, the price had been reduced again and again. Still, no one wanted to buy it. At first, Ramon thought he had read it wrong. A mansion for such a small price sounded unreal. He read the advertisement again with slow care. The name Thomas Jefferson was written in the description. The mansion had belonged to a man of that name many generations ago. He was not the famous historical figure, but a distant relative who had lived a private life. Over time, the family had moved away. The mansion had changed owners several times until it was left abandoned. Ramon felt a strange excitement. He folded the paper, slipped it into his pocket, and continued working. But the thought of the mansion stayed in his mind. During lunch, he looked at the advertisement again. The price was low, but still higher than what they usually spent. Yet, if they used all their savings, sold a few items, and took a small loan from a friend, they might be able to manage it. Ramon had never owned a home before. The idea felt heavy, but beautiful. That evening, he told Mira about the advertisement. Mira listened with wide eyes. She had heard stories of such old places. Some people believed abandoned houses held secrets or problems, but she also knew that a home of that size could change their life forever. They discussed everything for hours. Raju sat quietly at first, but then grew excited at the idea of living in a mansion. He imagined running through long halls and playing in a big grassy yard. The next morning, the family decided to visit the location. They packed some food and took a long bus ride that passed fields, farms, and quiet villages. When they finally reached the countryside road, the mansion came into view. It stood tall on a slight hill, surrounded by wild grass. The walls looked worn out and the paint was peeling. Branches of old trees touched the roof. But even with its age, the place had a grand look, as if it still carried memories of better days. Ramon felt nervous as they walked through the front gate. The iron bars were rusty, but still strong. The yard was large enough to hold a small playground, a garden, and more. They reached the main door. It was made of thick wood with carvings that had faded over time. A real estate agent arrived soon after. He was a middle-aged man named Salim who handled property sales in that region. He shook hands with them and began explaining the details of the mansion. He said the mansion had been built more than a century ago. It had belonged to families who were wealthy in their time. Over the years, the building had been passed down, rented, sold, and finally abandoned. Many buyers had visited, but everyone walked away after seeing the condition. The place needed repairs that many people found too costly, so the price was reduced again and again until it reached a point that shocked most people. Salim unlocked the door, and the family stepped inside. The air carried the smell of old wood and dust. Sunlight came through tall windows, filling the rooms with a gentle glow. The floors were cracked in some areas, but the walls were strong. There were many rooms, long corridors, and wide staircases that curved like gentle waves. Raju ran from one room to another with excitement. Mira walked through the kitchen, imagining how it would look after cleaning and repairs. Ramon studied every wall, every window, every crack. He saw not problems, but possibilities. They continued exploring the mansion. In one hallway, Mira noticed a long painting hanging crookedly. It showed the Jefferson family standing proudly in the garden many years ago. Their clothes looked old-fashioned. The children in the painting held books and wooden toys. The adults stood tall with calm faces. The painting gave them a small glimpse into the past. After touring the place for more than an hour, the family stepped outside again. They sat near a broken fountain and talked for a long time. Ramon felt fear and excitement at the same time. Buying the mansion meant spending all their money. If repairs became too costly, they might face trouble. But opportunities like this never came twice. The house had strong bones. It only needed attention and love. Finally, they made the decision. They would buy the mansion. Salim looked surprised, but pleased. He guided them through the paperwork. Ramon used their savings, borrowed a small amount from a trusted friend, and completed the purchase. For the first time in their life, they owned a large home. The feeling was overwhelming. A week later, they moved into the mansion with their few belongings. They brought their clothes, a few pots, a small table, and 2 mattresses. The rooms felt empty, but full of promise. They began cleaning from morning to evening. Raju helped by sweeping the floors, Mira wiped the windows, and Ramon worked on fixing loose boards and broken handles. Their tiredness did not matter because each day brought new happiness. One afternoon, while cleaning a side room on the upper floor, Raju noticed something strange. The wooden floor had a patch that looked different from the rest. The color was slightly darker, and the edges were uneven. He called his father with excitement. Ramon knelt down and tapped the wood gently. It sounded hollow. He touched it and felt that the wood was loose, as if it had been placed there on purpose to hide something. The family gathered around the patch with curiosity. Ramon tried to lift it but paused. He decided they would check it the next morning with proper tools. Something felt unusual about the patch. It did not look like a part of original construction. It looked like a secret. That night, the family sat near a small lantern in the big hall. They discussed what the patch could be hiding. Maybe it was an old storage space. Maybe someone had forgotten to repair it. Maybe it was nothing special. But deep inside, each of them felt that the mansion held more than dust and broken tiles. It held stories and secrets waiting to be uncovered. None of them knew that this small, scoot discovery would change their life completely. None of them guessed that what lay under that floor would draw the attention of historians, researchers, and even the entire nation. The mansion had been silent for many years, but now it was ready to speak again. The next morning arrived with soft sunlight entering through the cracked windows of the mansion. The air was cool and fresh. Ramon woke up early, filled with curiosity about the wooden patch in the upper room. He ate a quick breakfast with Mira and Raju, then picked up a small toolbox he used for repair jobs. Today he wanted to find out what was beneath that strange piece of wood. The family walked together toward the room. The house was still quiet except for the occasional sound of birds outside. When they entered the room, the patch looked even more unusual than before. It was placed exactly in the center of the floor, as if someone had hidden it on purpose. Ramon placed his tools beside him, then knelt down. Mira and Raju stood behind him, watching with excitement and a little nervousness. Ramon used a small flat tool to gently lift the edge of the wooden patch. At first it did not move. He tried again, with more pressure. Slowly, the wood started to rise. Raju held his breath as the patch lifted completely. Underneath the wood was a dark, open space. Ramon widened the opening so they could see more clearly. A deep hush filled the room. Beneath the floor was something unexpected. They saw a narrow staircase going down into darkness. It was made of stone and wood, covered with years of dust. The air rising from below was colder than the room. Myra's voice shook slightly when she asked where the stairs might lead. Ramon did not answer immediately. He held his small torch, turned it on, and pointed the light down the staircase. The light reached only a short distance before disappearing into darkness. Ramon slowly placed his foot on the first step. He moved carefully because the wood looked old. It held his weight. He moved down another step. Mira and Raju watched silently. When the staircase seemed safe, he told them to follow him but to move slowly and hold the railing. They descended step by step. The narrow passage was quiet. Only the sound of their breathing echoed faintly. After a few steps, the staircase reached a small landing and then continued further down. The walls were made of stone blocks, each one rough in texture. Cobwebs hung like forgotten threads. The air smelled like old books and earth. When they reached the bottom, torchlight revealed a long corridor stretching ahead. The floor was dusty and scattered with little pieces of wood and broken leaves that had somehow blown inside long ago. The corridor was wide enough for two people to walk side by side. It felt like a hidden world completely separate from the mansion above. Ramon walked first. Mira held Raju's hand tightly, afraid he might trip in the darkness. Their footsteps made soft sounds as the dust shifted under their feet. They passed old bricks, parts of wooden shelves, and faded markings on the wall. Some shelves were empty, while others held tiny pieces of metal that looked like broken tools. As they reached the end of the corridor, they saw a wooden door. The door looked old, but strong. It had iron hinges that had rusted with time. Ramon pushed it gently. To his surprise, the door opened easily, as if someone had recently oiled it. The family exchanged glances. Why would an old hidden basement have a door that opened so smoothly they stepped inside the room? It was large, rectangular, and filled with shadows. Ramon moved the torch around the space. In the far corner were several wooden boxes stacked neatly. There was no dust on the tops of those boxes, which made them seem even more mysterious. It looked as though no one had touched them for decades, yet they were arranged with care. Ramon approached the first box. It was locked with a simple latch, but the latch had weakened over the years. With a gentle pull, the box opened. Inside it were old papers, maps, and thick books, tied together with cloth. The papers were slightly yellow, but still in good condition. Some had handwritten text and old stamps. Mira leaned forward and whispered that these items must be very old. Raju pointed to a map that showed lines and marks. He did not understand. Ramon lifted one book and wiped the dust from its cover. The handwriting inside looked like something from history. The words looked formal and carefully written. Some papers had drawings of buildings, land borders, and structures that seemed important. It became clear that these documents once belonged to someone educated and respected. Mira said they might be family records or valuable historical files. Ramon opened another box. This one held something different. Inside were gold coins wrapped in cloth. The coins had symbols carved on them, showing faces, numbers, and patterns that looked ancient. Mira gasped. She had never seen gold coins in real life. Raju stared with big eyes. He touched one coin gently, surprised at its weight. Ramon looked around. The discovery felt unbelievable. A poor family like theirs had never imagined finding something so precious. But he stayed calm. He knew that old items like these were not just treasure for personal use. They might belong to the nation's heritage. He believed that the right thing to do was to protect these items, not to hide them. In another box, they found silver pieces, hand-carved metals, and decorated metal plates. Each item told a part of a forgotten story. There were also small tools, wooden frames, and a set of keys that looked like they belonged to furniture or trunks that no longer existed. The family felt a strange mixture of excitement and responsibility. They sat quietly for a moment to take everything in. Ramon was the first to speak. He said they must call someone who understood the value of such items. They could not simply keep these things hidden. Mira agreed. She said these things were part of someone's life and might hold knowledge that historians could learn from. Raju nodded, even though he did not fully understand the importance. Before leaving the basement, Ramon walked around the room, checking if there were more hidden spaces. He found a small wall shelf with a leather pouch. Inside the pouch were small rolled papers. These papers had sketches of symbols and short notes. They looked like instructions or reminders written in handwriting different from the earlier documents. It seemed like the basement had been used for storing important materials by someone who valued organization and secrecy. After gathering everything they could observe without touching too much, the family walked back through the corridor. They climbed the staircase slowly, carrying the torch. When they reached the room above, they breathed deeply, relieved to be back in the sunlight. They covered the opening again with a wooden patch to keep everything safe until they informed the right person. The discovery felt too important to leave exposed. Mira locked the room and kept the key with her. Ramon said that until an expert came, no one should touch anything inside the basement. That evening they sat in the main hall of the mansion. The hall looked bigger than ever, and their voices echoed softly. They talked about what they should do next. Ramon said he would contact a local historian named Kieran. Kieran was known for studying old buildings and documents. Ramon believed that he could guide them in the best direction. As the family talked, the mansion felt different. It no longer felt like an abandoned place. It felt alive, with secrets and stories waiting to be told. The day's discoveries had changed their view of the house completely. It was not just a place to live. It was a doorway to history. Later that night, before sleeping, Ramon stepped out to the porch. The sky was filled with stars, and the cool breeze brushed against his face. He felt grateful for the unexpected turn in their life. They had come from a place of struggle, but now they stood at the center of something extraordinary. He looked at the mansion's dark windows and wondered about the person who had hidden those boxes long ago. What was their story? What did they hope to protect? And why had no one spoken of this basement for so many decades? Ramon knew that tomorrow would bring answers. He also knew that once the truth reached the world, nothing would be the same again for their family. The hidden floor was only the beginning. More surprises were waiting, and their lives were about to change in ways they could not imagine. The next morning came quickly for the family. Ramon did not sleep much because his mind kept returning to the hidden basement and everything they had seen inside it. He felt both excited and nervous. The items they had found were old and precious. They did not belong in a dark room under the floor. They needed to be studied by someone who understood history after breakfast. Ramon took the small paper where he had written the phone number of Kieran, the local historian. Kieran was known in many towns for his knowledge of old buildings, antiques, and forgotten records. He was friendly and honest. People trusted him because he always respected historical value. Ramon felt he was the right person to contact. He dialed the number on his old phone. The call rang a few times before Kieran answered with a calm voice. Ramon explained everything slowly. He described the wooden patch, the stairs, the corridor, the boxers, and the documents. He tried to stay calm, even though his heart felt heavy with excitement. Kieran listened in silence at first, then spoke in a serious tone. He said he would come at once. He asked Ramon to touch nothing until he arrived. Ramon ended the call and told Mira and Raju. They became a little nervous. The mansion suddenly felt like an important place, not just a new home. Within an hour, a small car arrived at the gate. A tall man with glasses stepped out, carrying a brown leather bag. He walked with steady steps toward the family. He introduced himself as Kieran and greeted them warmly. Even though he smiled, his eyes showed deep focus. He was eager to see what the family had found. Ramon led him to the room with the wooden patch. Myra and Raju followed. With slow care, Ramon lifted the patch again. Kieran leaned forward and studied the hidden stairs with great interest. He said it was unusual for old mansions to have secret basements, unless something important had been stored there. Kieran asked for permission to go inside. Ramon nodded, and the group descended the staircase together. The torchlight moved across the stone walls, revealing the same dust and cobwebs they had seen yesterday. The corridor looked long and quiet, as if time had stopped there when they reached the wooden door. Kieran placed his hand on the surface and smiled softly. He said the wood was strong and made with skill. Then they stepped into the large room. The boxes stood exactly where they had left them. Kieran slowly opened one box and carefully lifted the old book inside it. His hands trembled slightly. He examined the handwriting with respect, turning each page gently. He studied the maps, seals, and stamps with deep concentration. He then opened the box with the gold coins. His eyes widened. He said these coins belonged to an era that most people knew only from books. The designs on the coins matched patterns used by families connected to early national history. He explained that such items were extremely rare and had historical importance more than financial value. Mira stood beside him, listening with great attention. Raju watched every moment like he was witnessing a treasure seen in real life. Ramon waited quietly, hoping he had done the right thing by calling Kiran. After checking the boxes one by one, Kiran placed his bag down and took a deep breath. He looked at the family and told them they had discovered something extraordinary. He said these items were part of a hidden chapter of the Jefferson family's past. They might help historians understand events that were never recorded before. Kiran said the National Museum must be informed at once. Such items belonged in safe hands where experts could study them properly. He praised the family for not hiding the discovery. He said many people might have kept these things secretly. But the family made an honest choice. Ramon felt relieved hearing these words. He knew honesty mattered more than wealth. Mira smiled softly, proud of her husband's decision. Kiran contacted the museum through his phone. The news reached the museum director, who became surprised and excited. He ordered a team of experts to travel to the mansion immediately. Kiran stayed with the family while waiting. He told them stories about old houses, forgotten families, and discoveries made in the past. Raju listened carefully, enjoying every word. By afternoon, 3 cars arrived at the mansion. A team of museum experts stepped out carrying equipment, cameras, and boxes. They introduced themselves to Ramon and Myra with respect. They wore gloves and protective clothing to handle the items correctly. Kiran guided them down to the basement, explaining everything he had observed. When the experts saw the items inside the boxes, their expressions changed to amazement. They examined every document, coin, medal, and book with great care. They took photographs, made notes, and documented the condition of each item. One expert said the handwritten letters might contain information that had never been published. Another said the maps could reveal historical details about land ownership and early settlements. As they worked, 2 experts spoke in gentle excitement. They said the collection looked original and untouched. They believed the items were protected for many years by someone who understood their importance. The basement itself looked like it was made as a private archive, hidden from the world for a special reason. Meanwhile, news began to spread. The museum team contacted higher officials. Someone posted a short update online. That update reached a reporter who called another reporter. Soon the story reached local news channels. Within hours, the mansion became the focus of attention. By evening, 2 small vans carrying reporters arrived at the gate. They waited politely for the family and museum team to speak. A security guard hired by the museum stood near the entrance to ensure no one disturbed the basement. Ramon never imagined his house would need security guards. When the news reporter spoke to Ramon, he stayed humble. He said he only wished to do the right thing. He said he did not want any reward. Mira stood next to him, holding Rayu's shoulder. They were simple people who had lived a simple life. They had never imagined standing in front of cameras. The news channels reported the discovery across the nation. People in different cities spoke about the honest family who found a hidden part of history beneath their floor. Social media shared pictures of the mansion, the staircase, and the old items. Many people admired the family for their honesty. With the rising attention, curious visitors began arriving at the gate. Some came only to see the mansion. Others offered to buy the items for large amounts of money. Ramon refused every offer with calm firmness. He said the items belonged to history, not to him. The museum team announced that the items would be taken to the National Museum for preservation. They asked Ramon to sign legal documents transferring the objects for study. Ramon agreed. He wanted the world to benefit from the knowledge stored in those boxes before leaving. The museum director thanked the family in person. He said the discovery would help future generations learn about the past. He said the family had done a great service to the country that night. When the experts finally left, the family stood quietly inside the mansion. Everything felt different. The house no longer felt like an old abandoned place. It felt like a part of national history. As the family prepared for bed, Ramon looked at the wooden patch again. He felt that the basement was only the beginning. Something else might still be hiding in the mansion. The corridors, the walls, the rooms, the shelves. Everything felt filled with silent stories. He did not know yet that the museum team would soon find something even more shocking. Something that would make the entire nation turn its eyes once again toward the mansion. Something hidden in one of the boxes that no one had opened completely. This discovery would change history, even more than the gold coins and old documents, and the family would stand in the center of it once again. The morning light entered the old mansion with a soft glow, touching the wooden floor and the tall windows. Mira woke up early because she could not stop thinking about the strange metal hatch Thomas had discovered beneath the floor of the study. All night she had turned in her bed, imagining what could be inside the underground room. She felt both excited and scared at the same time. The house felt different to her now. It felt like it was breathing with secrets. Ion was already awake when Mira stepped into the kitchen. He was sitting quietly near the window with a cup of tea. His face looked calm, but Mira could see a mixture of curiosity and worry in his eyes. He looked at her and said that he could not sleep well either. Thomas joined them a few minutes later and placed the old key on the table. The key looked heavy and old, shaped with great skill, and it seemed to glow faintly in the morning light. The family stared at it as if it carried a story of its own. After a small breakfast, they walked to the study. The study felt colder than the rest of the house. The wooden floor was still removed from yesterday. The metal hatch waited in silence, as if it had been waiting for years for someone to open it. Ion lifted the key and placed it slowly into the lock. He paused for a short moment, gathering courage. Then he turned the key. The lock clicked. The sound echoed in the room. It felt louder than it should have been. The metal hatch lifted with a slow creak. A cool breath of air rose from below. It smelled like old stone and dust, mixed with something earthy. A narrow staircase led downward. It was dark, so Thomas brought a flashlight, and the beam cut through the shadows. Mira asked if they should really go down. Ion nodded. He believed that if they owned this mansion now, they should know everything about it. They could not live above secrets forever. Thomas stepped down first because he was the most confident of the three. Ion and Mira followed closely behind. The stairs were steep but strong. After a short walk down, the staircase opened into a wide underground room made of stone bricks. The walls were solid and looked very old, as if they had been built with great care many years ago. The room had no furniture, but there were markings on the walls. They were symbols, shapes, and lines that looked like they described something important. In the center of the room stood a long wooden table covered with dust. On top of the table lay another metal box, smaller than the one they had found earlier. This one had no lock. It just had a heavy lid that looked tight. Thomas brushed some dust away and slowly lifted the lid. Inside the box were old papers, rolled maps, and several notebooks. The notebooks were covered in worn leather. Mira picked one up carefully. She opened it slowly, as if she was touching something fragile. Inside the notebook were neat handwritten notes. The handwriting looked elegant and old-fashioned. At the top of the first page was written one name, Thomas Jefferson. Mira's hand shook slightly. The notebook contained records of the mansion, experiments, and ideas he had worked on. But the pages were not simple notes. They described an underground foundation he had been designing, a place where he planned to store documents, inventions, and items that he believed would help future generations understand his thoughts. Mira showed a page where Jefferson wrote that he wanted a safe place to keep certain maps and plans that were very important to him. He wrote about a dream of preserving knowledge so people many years later could learn from it. Ion held another notebook. He found pages describing not just ideas, but sketches of a large hidden chamber somewhere under the estate. Ion wondered if that chamber still existed or if they were standing inside it now, while they studied the notebooks. Thomas found another map inside the box. It was drawn on yellow paper that had aged a lot. The map showed the mansion and the land around it. But the most surprising part was that it showed more underground rooms, not just the one they were currently in. Mira pointed to a spot on the map that looked like a hallway connecting to another secret area deeper in the ground. Ion felt a chill of excitement. If this map was correct, there was still something more hidden below. Thomas walked to the far wall, where the map showed a possible entrance. He used his flashlight to search the stone surface. After a few moments, he noticed a part of the wall that looked slightly different from the rest. The stone color was not the same shape, and it sounded hollow when he tapped it lightly. He called Mira and Ion to come closer. Ion ran his fingers along the stone and felt a small line that formed the shape of a door. A hidden door. Ion pressed firmly, and the stone panel moved slightly inward. Thomas helped push it open further. A narrow passage revealed itself. It was darker and deeper than the first staircase. The air smelled even older here. Mira hesitated, but Ion encouraged her. He reminded her that they had come this far, and that maybe this was the real secret that Thomas Jefferson had wanted to hide for centuries. Slowly, they stepped into the passage. Their footsteps echoed softly. The passage ended at another wooden door, but this one was decorated with carved lines and symbols. Thomas touched the door and found it unlocked. When he pushed it open, the three entered a second underground room. This room was completely different from the first one. It was larger and filled with shelves. The shelves held wooden boxes, rolled scrolls, sealed containers, and old chests. Each item looked carefully stored. The air felt calm, as if time itself had slowed inside this chamber. Mira walked to the nearest shelf and opened a small wooden box. Inside were old coins that looked like they belonged to a collection. Another box held letters sealed in wax. The wax had faded through time, but the letters remained untouched. Ion opened one of the sealed containers. Inside it were documents describing early plans of inventions. There were sketches of tools, designs of mechanisms, and written explanations. The family stood in silence, amazed at the collection. It was like stepping into a time capsule. Thomas opened a chest in the corner. Inside were more notebooks wrapped in cloth. When he unwrapped them, he found pages of writings about architecture, philosophy, and agriculture. The words were thoughtful and full of ideas about building a better society. Ion realized that this underground chamber was not a secret place for something dangerous. It was a place filled with knowledge, a place built to protect ideas. Mira found a long metal box stored under the shelves. When she opened it, she saw rolled drawings of the mansion. They were original plans, drawn with careful lines and notes. On one sheet, they found a headline saying that the design was an early vision of how the mansion could be expanded in the future. There were gardens, extra rooms, and pathways that had never been built. It was like discovering a dream left unfinished. While exploring, Thomas found a small corner with a stone pedestal. On the pedestal was a single wooden book. It was unusual because it was shaped like a book, but made from smooth carved wood. Ion opened it gently. Inside were engraved words. The message was short but powerful. It spoke about the importance of preserving wisdom for future generations and about sharing knowledge honestly. The words touched their hearts. It felt like a message written for anyone who found it, no matter how many years had passed. The three stood silently, absorbing the moment. They understood that they had discovered something important, something that belonged not just to them, but to everyone. This was not treasure in the sense of gold or wealth. It was treasure in the form of history, learning, and ideas. After exploring for a long time, they carried the notebooks and maps to the center of the room. Ion said they needed to treat everything with great care. Myra agreed. She felt proud that their humble family had discovered something of such value. Thomas looked around one last time and said that they should not keep this discovery hidden. He believed this knowledge should be shared with historians so it could help the whole nation understand a part of the past that had been forgotten. As they walked back up the staircase and closed the metal hatch, the mansion felt different. It felt alive with a story that had finally reached the surface. The family knew that the world outside would soon hear about what they had found beneath the floor, and none of them were prepared for how big the reaction would be. The next morning arrived quietly, but the mansion felt brighter than ever. Sunlight touched the windows as if the house itself welcomed a new beginning. Mira stood near the staircase and looked around the study where all of this had started. She could still see the marks on the floor where the hatch had been opened. It made her think of how quickly life could change. Just days ago, they had been a simple family trying to build a better future. Now they were standing on the edge of history. Ion entered the room holding a notebook from the underground chamber. He looked thoughtful. He told Mira that he had been reading the pages again after waking up. He believed the writings held deep meaning and should be shared with the world. Mira agreed. She felt that keeping the discovery hidden would not honor the effort Thomas Jefferson had put into preserving his ideas. Thomas soon joined them, carrying the rolled map they had found. He carefully placed it on the table. The map showed the full underground design, including the chamber, the passage, and the markings of other small storage areas. Ion pointed at the map and explained that historians would be excited to study the design. Mira felt proud that their family was the one who uncovered this part of the past. Ion decided that they should contact local officials and elect a historical group so the place could be studied safely. He wanted experts to take care of the documents and handle them with respect. Mira agreed, but she also felt nervous. She wondered how people would react when they learned that a poor family had found something so important. She hoped people would understand that they had approached everything with honesty. Later that day, Ion made a few calls. He contacted a local museum and a historian known for studying old American estates. The historian was surprised but interested. He asked many questions and requested permission to visit the mansion as soon as possible. Ion explained everything clearly and said the family wanted to do the right thing. Before ending the call, the historian thanked him and said this discovery could be one of the most important finds in recent times. A few hours later, a group of experts arrived at the mansion. They came with cameras, tools, notebooks, and gentle respect for the property. Mira watched them walk around the study and examine the metal hatch. They asked questions, but also listened carefully as Ion explained how they had found the underground room. Thomas guided them downstairs with a flashlight, making sure everyone stepped safely. The experts entered the chamber with wide eyes. They were amazed by the shelves, the boxes, the notebooks, and the calm air inside. Some whispered in surprise. Others took careful notes. One historian examined the handwriting in the notebooks and confirmed that the style matched documents from the same period. Another expert studied the wooden boxes and said, "They were built with great skill and preserved very well." The room felt full of excitement. The experts handled everything with care. They wore gloves and used soft brushes to remove dust. Mira felt relieved. She did not want anything to be damaged. Ion stood quietly as the experts explored. He felt grateful that they understood the importance of what they were seeing. By the afternoon, news had already spread. It started with a small message sent by one of the historians to a research center. Within hours, more people knew about the discovery. Soon, reporters arrived at the mansion's gate. They carried cameras and asked many questions. Ion stepped outside with Myra and explained that they would let people know everything once the experts had completed their initial study. The reporters kept asking how a simple family had made such a discovery. Ion answered with calm words. He said that sometimes life surprises people who expect little. Mira stood beside him, proud of her husband's gentle honesty. Thomas brought water for the reporters and tried to keep everyone comfortable, even though the situation felt overwhelming. The following day, the mansion became even busier. More researchers, museum staff, and historians visited. The underground chamber was now known as a historic vault. People were amazed by its condition and the amount of preserved material inside. Maps, letters, designs, and tools from centuries earlier were now being studied with great interest. One historian shared something surprising. He said that the chamber might hold clues about important decisions made during early American history. The notebooks contained thoughts and notes that could change the way people understood that time. Mira listened carefully. She felt amazed that their discovery could help millions of people learn something new. The government soon got involved. A team visited the mansion to check the site and ensure that everything was being handled safely. They praised the family for reporting the discovery instead of hiding it. They said the family had shown strong character. Mira felt shy hearing their words, but she also felt proud. Ion and Mira were asked if they wanted to donate the Grant underground chamber to the nation as a historical site. Ion said that the chamber did not belong to only them. It belonged to history. He said that if sharing it meant helping people learn, then he would gladly donate it. Mira agreed with a warm smile in return for their donation. The government offered to help the family repair the mansion and support them financially for any inconvenience. They also announced that the family would be recognized publicly for their honesty and contribution. The news spread quickly across the country. Within days, people everywhere started talking about the family. Articles were written about their discovery. Videos were made explaining the importance of the notebooks and maps. The family's story became an example of honesty, patience, and trust. Many people said they felt inspired by the way the family handled everything. Visitors from different places came to learn about the mansion. Ion and Myra were invited to events and interviews. They spoke about their experience with simple and humble words. They said they never wanted fame. They only wanted a peaceful life. But they were grateful that their actions brought something good to the world. Thomas, who had always been curious and brave, received great appreciation too. Many people admired how he supported his parents and took care of the discovery with responsibility. He felt proud but stayed grounded. He continued helping the experts whenever they needed assistance. One evening, after many busy days, the family sat outside on the porch. The sky was clear and stars shone brightly. The mansion, once silent and forgotten, now felt alive with new purpose. Mira held Ion's hand and said everything had changed, but she still felt the same warmth inside their home. Ion smiled. He said that the biggest treasure was not the chamber, but the strength their family had shown together. Thomas looked at the sky, said he wanted to study history when he grew older. He wanted to protect stories and objects from the past. Ion and Mira felt proud of his dream. As the days passed, the mansion was officially declared a historical site. Experts continued their work carefully. The underground chamber was preserved with new lighting and safety features. Visitors could now tour the area and read about the family's discovery. The family became known not for wealth, but for honesty. People admired them for respecting the past and sharing it with the world. Their once simple lives had become meaningful in a new and beautiful way. On the final day of the month, the family gathered inside the study. They looked at the hatch that had once hidden centuries of history. Ion placed his hand on the wooden floor and closed his eyes for a moment. He felt grateful for everything that had happened. He opened his eyes and smiled at Mira and Thomas. He said the house chose them for a reason. Mira agreed. She felt that the mansion wanted to tell its story, and their family became the ones who helped it speak. Together, they stepped out of the study and into the bright hallway. The mansion no longer felt like a forgotten place. It now felt like a guardian of history, alive and ready to share its stories with the nation. And so, the discovery beneath the floor did more than shock the world. It changed the lives of a humble family forever, reminding everyone that even the quietest people can become part of something great. When they choose honesty over silence and courage over fear,